My name is Nathan Cole. I'm 37 years old, owner of 3 diners scattered across western Colorado. People around here know me as the guy who pours the best black coffee at sunrise, the man who tips his cooks extra when they work, doubles the quiet boss with rough hands and a tired smile. But 15 years ago, I was no one. Just a dishwasher scraping burnt eggs off chipped plates, a husband trapped in a marriage that felt like drowning in bright daylight. Until the day she left me. The sun beat down on me like punishment. I squinted against the blinding Colorado sky, my eyes tracing the warped lines of heat that rose from the cracked asphalt. 10 minutes ago, our silver SUV had been right there, parked next to the rusted gas pump, humming softly in the morning quiet. Now it was gone. Chloe was gone. Ela, Stephanie, Lauren, all of them gone. At first, I just stood there blinking in confusion. Sweat slid down my temples, dampening the collar of my faded t-shirt. The empty space felt unreal, like a magician's trick I couldn't puzzle out. My brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe they'd moved the car around back. Maybe they'd gone to find food. Maybe they'd just driven off to mess with me, watching from somewhere nearby, laughing as I panicked under the sun. Because that's what they did. Pranks. Jokes. Lighten up, Nathan, Chloe would say, tossing her golden hair-back eyes gleaming with mischief that always carried an edge of cruelty. I could still hear Stephanie's high nasal laugh echoing from the lake house the day before when she'd accidentally spilled her iced coffee into my lap and called it a baptism. Chloe had laughed with them. She always laughed with them. I turned in slow, tight circles, scanning the gas station. The building itself was little more than a crumbling shack with sun-bleached flyers taped to cracked windows. The neon open sign buzzed weakly, its last O flickering on and off like a dying heartbeat. There was no backlot, no shade, just miles and miles of empty highway, shimmering in the July heat, stretching in both directions, with no cars in sight. My pulse kicked up a notch. I walked back to where the car had been staring at the oil stain left on the ground, like a ghost footprint. I half expected Chloe to pop out from behind the pump, grinning, phone in hand, filming my reaction for their private group chat. Look at his face, oh my God. But no one jumped out. The air was silent except for the distant drone of cicadas. My hands trembled as I patted my pockets. No phone, no wallet, no keys. I'd left them all in the car when I'd run in to use the gas station bathroom, thinking I'd be gone for just a minute. Why carry them for a 30-second piss break? Chloe had been sitting behind the wheel, sunglasses perched on her nose, scrolling her phone. Stephanie was in the passenger seat, reapplying lip gloss, while Ella and Lauren giggled in the back. They didn't even say anything as I got out, just kept whispering to each other with little smirks. I'd hated this trip from the start. 3 days of driving from lake house to cabin to river dock. Chloe insisting it would be good for us. You never spend time with my friends, she'd said, pouting her lower lip, trembling just enough to make me cave. You never try, Nathan. Please. Just this once. So I went. I sat through their inside jokes, their jabs about how I didn't drink enough, didn't party enough, didn't live enough. I watched Chloe become someone else around them, sharper, louder, careless with my feelings. I told myself it was only a few days. I could survive it. But now, as the sun baked my skin and the gas station sign hummed overhead, I felt the reality settle over me like a slab of concrete. This wasn't a prank. They were gone. Really gone. My throat felt tight. I wiped my forehead with the back of my hand, smearing sweat and grit across my brow. Heat shimmered off the pavement in waves that made the horizon dance. I could almost hear Chloe's voice in my head, dripping with mock sympathy. Oh my God, Nathan, calm down. It was just a joke. But this wasn't a joke. I looked at the door to the gas station smudged with fingerprints and wondered if I should go back in, ask the bored cashier behind the counter to borrow a phone. But my stomach twisted at the thought. What would I even say? Hey, my wife and her friends ditched me here with nothing. Can I use your phone to call them so they can laugh at me again? I walked to the edge of the lot, gravel crunching under my sneakers, and shaded my eyes with my palm. The road stretched out like a ribbon laid across the earth, empty in both directions. No cars, no distant engine growl. Just the wind rattling the thin metal signpost beside me. I tried to tell myself they'd come back. Any second now. Chloe would pull up dust, kicking off the tires, her hair whipping in the wind as she leaned out the window with a grin. Gotcha. Come on, get in, babe. And I'd force a chuckle brush off the burning humiliation in my chest and pretend everything was fine, like I always did. But the minutes dragged on, slow and heavy, each one pressing down on me until it felt hard to breathe. Sweat pooled at the base of my neck, soaking into my shirt. My mouth tasted like dust. I kicked a pebble across the pavement, listening to it clink against the concrete barrier lining the lot. A fly landed on my cheek, and I swatted it away with a muttered curse. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a cold, quiet voice whispered what I already knew. They weren't coming back. This wasn't about teaching me to lighten up or take a joke. This was punishment. This was them cutting me out, leaving me stranded under a white-hot sun with no way home, no money, no proof of who I was. Like I was nothing, like I didn't matter. The thought lodged in my chest, heavy and dark. I felt it bloom into something else, something sharper than fear. Rage flickered at the edges of my vision, a brief, dangerous light. But it guttered out just as quickly, leaving only exhaustion in its place. I sank down onto the low concrete parking stop, elbows resting on my knees, head hanging forward. My skin burned under the relentless sun, and the gas station behind me buzzed and hummed indifferent. Somewhere far off, a bird cried out, then silence. The emptiness stretched around me wide and endless. For the first time in 5 years, there was no Chloe telling me what to do. No friends laughing at my expense, no script I was forced to read from. Just me, alone. And for the first time in 5 years, despite the terror gnawing at my gut, a small, unfamiliar thought took root in my mind. What if this was the best thing that ever happened to me? I closed my eyes against the harsh glare of the sun and let the thought sit there warm and frightening, like a tiny flame in the dark. I sat there on the concrete parking stop, elbows digging into my thighs, sweat dripping from my brow onto the dust-caked ground. The smell of hot tar and gasoline rose around me, thick and suffocating. I forced myself to look up at the road, hoping for a glint of silver in the distance, the SUV cresting over the horizon, Chloe leaning out the window, waving me over, eyes crinkled with laughter. But there was nothing. Just that endless highway, a wavering ribbon under the sun. I let out a slow, shaky breath. My chest felt tight, like something heavy was pressing down on my lungs. I tried to swallow, but my mouth was bone-dry tongue sticking to the roof of my mouth. The thoughts slithered through my mind again, cold and undeniable. They weren't coming back. For a moment, rage rose up, bitter and sharp. Rage at Chloe for doing this, rage at Stephanie and her smug little smirk, rage at Ela and Lauren for giggling in the back seat as they drove away. Rage at myself for believing I ever mattered to them. Because the truth was deep down I'd known. I'd known it the first time Chloe rolled her eyes when I tried to stand up for myself. The first time Stephanie laughed at my clothes and Chloe joined in instead of defending me. The first time Ella whispered something cruel under her breath, and Lauren choked on her cocktail, tears streaming down her cheeks from laughing so hard. Every humiliation, every joke at my expense, it all built to this moment. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. 5 years of marriage, of thinking love meant enduring whatever they threw at me. 5 years of telling myself, this is normal, this is fine, just smile, and it will pass. But it never passed. It only got worse. And now, sitting under a pitiless sun with nothing but my clothes and the taste of betrayal in my mouth, I realized the truth I'd spent half a decade running from. Chloe didn't love me. Not really. Maybe she never had. I rubbed my palms against my jeans, trying to ground myself. The denim felt rough, sticky with sweat and dust. A fly buzzed near my ear, and I batted it away with a snarl. My body felt hollow, like everything inside me had been scooped out and left to rot in the heat. A memory flashed, Chloe smiling at me across the kitchen table, steam rising from her coffee mug. For a second, I almost felt comforted. But then I remembered the day before, sitting on the back patio of Stephanie's lake house, when Chloe poured her wine and pretended not to notice as Stephanie flicked ash from her cigarette onto my shoe. I'd looked at Chloe hoping for a glare, or even a sigh of annoyance. But she just smirked into her glass like she enjoyed watching me squirm. I wiped my forehead again, staring at the horizon. No phone, no wallet, no ID, no way to prove I even exist. A bitter laugh slipped out, hoarse and sharp. Maybe that's what they wanted. To erase me, leave me stranded out here until I became nothing more than a forgotten man in a dusty gas station story. The thought sent a cold shiver down my spine despite the oppressive heat. I felt it then, a line snapping inside me, clean and final. Whatever I'd been clinging to, love, marriage, hope, illusions, was gone. All that was left was the dry, ragged truth scraping against my bones. They didn't care if I lived or died. I stood up slowly, legs stiff from sitting too long on the scorching concrete. My shadow stretched across the ground, long and thin in the afternoon sun. For the first time in years, I looked at myself. Really looked and felt something other than shame. Yes, I was broke. Yes, I was stranded in the middle of nowhere. But for the first time, I was alone on my own terms. No Chloe's voice in my ear, no Stephanie's sneer cutting into my chest. No Ayla and Lauren's whispered commentary making me feel small. Just me, Nathan, alone but alive. I dusted off my jeans, feeling grit fall away from my thighs, and squared my shoulders. The realization settled in my chest, heavy but solid. Whatever came next, whatever hell I'd have to crawl through to survive, it would be my choice. I wouldn't wait for them to come back. I wouldn't be their punchline anymore. I turned and walked towards the gas station, boots crunching gravel with each step, the flickering open sign buzzing above me like a dying star. I didn't know where I was going or what I would do, but for the first time in a long time, my steps felt like my own. And as I pushed open the glass door, the blast of stale air conditioning hitting my burning skin, a single thought anchored me against the rising tide of fear. They left me here to break me. But maybe they just set me free. I stepped into the gas station, the door jingling weakly behind me. The blast of air conditioning hit my burning skin, making goosebumps prickle across my arms. The place smelled of burnt coffee and sour mop water. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing faintly like trapped insects. Behind the counter, a teenage cashier with limp brown hair scrolled through her phone, chewing gum with her mouth open. She didn't even glance up as I walked past. I paused by the dusty racks of beef jerky and stale candy bars, my eyes scanning the store, as if I might spot Chloe hiding behind the drink fridge, giggling with her friends, waiting to yell "gotcha" and film my reaction. But there was no one, just me, the cashier, and a sweaty man in a trucker hat browsing scratch-off lottery tickets with the desperation of someone who'd already lost too much. I drifted towards the bathroom again, my mind flickering like the faulty lights above. When I reached the grimy mirror, I barely recognized myself. Red-rimmed eyes, sweat-slick hair plastered to my forehead, salt stains blooming on my t-shirt. I splashed cold water on my face, gripped the chipped porcelain sink, and forced myself to breathe. They'll come back, I told myself. They always come back. It's just a joke, a test. They want to see how long I'll wait before I break. Because that was how Chloe worked. Pushing me further and further, chipping away at me with every prank, every sharp word hidden behind a smile. Testing how far I'd bend before snapping in two. I stared at my reflection until my eyes blurred. Then I turned, walked back into the store and bought a bottle of water with a handful of coins I found at the bottom of my pocket. It was warm, but it wet my tongue enough to swallow. I stepped outside again. The sun was lower now, sliding west across the sky, but the heat still burned down on the blacktop. Shadows lengthened, stretching out like grasping fingers. I paced the small lot gravel crunching under my worn sneakers. I kept glancing down the road, straining for the sound of tires on pavement. Any moment now. Any second I'd hear the low hum of the SUV engine, see the glint of chrome under the dying sun, and Chloe would pull up sunglasses perched on her nose, smirking. "There you are, babe. Thought we lost you." I'd force a laugh, pretend I hadn't spent the last 2 hours baking under the sun thinking about what life would be like if they never came back. Minutes dragged by like hours. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and hot asphalt. Dust devils spun across the highway in the distance. Tiny, swirling ghosts, dissolving as quickly as they formed. I watched them, wondering if I'd dissolve to fade away into the dry Colorado air until nothing was left. I sat down on the curb, elbows on my knees, the water bottle dangling from my fingers. A bead of sweat slid down my spine, pooling in the waistband of my jeans. I didn't bother wiping it away. I just watched the horizon, feeling each second tick by heavy and endless. At one point, I heard a car engine approaching, and my heart leapt into my throat. I scrambled to my feet, eyes squinting against the dying light. But it wasn't them. Just a dusty old sedan rattling by the driver, staring straight ahead, oblivious to the man standing there, with hope bleeding out of his eyes. I sank back down onto the curb. My legs felt weak, rubbery. I twisted the cap off the water bottle and drained the last of it, warm, plastic tasting bitter on my tongue. I felt empty, like a husk scraped clean from the inside out. A memory rose unbidden, Chloe sitting cross-legged on our bed hair, pulled into a messy bun, scrolling through her phone while I talked about my day. She didn't even look up, just murmured fingers tapping out a reply to someone else, someone more important. I'd felt small then, smaller than I ever thought possible. But this sitting alone at a gas station, abandoned like trash on the side of the highway, this was smaller still. A fly buzzed around my face. I swatted it away lazily, too tired to care. The shadows grew longer, the heat fading into a sharp evening chill. Somewhere nearby, a coyote howled, the sound slicing through the quiet like a knife. I shivered. My stomach growled tight with hunger. I tried to remember the last time I'd eaten a stale bagel at sunrise, cold and chewy, eaten in silence, while Chloe and her friends shared inside jokes about something I didn't understand. My chest tightened at the memory. I'd never belonged there. Maybe I never belonged anywhere. But the thought felt too big, too heavy to carry right now. So I just sat staring at the horizon as darkness began to creep across the sky, the first faint stars flickering into view overhead. Each pinpoint of light felt impossibly far away, like Chloe and the life I'd thought I had. The wind picked up, rustling the weeds growing along the edge of the lot. The gas station sign buzzed and flickered, casting me in and out of dim neon light. My shadow wavered across the pavement, stretching long and thin and lonely. I rubbed my palms against my jeans again, feeling grit grind into my skin. I told myself one last time they'll come back. They have to come back. But in the deepest part of my chest, in the quiet place where truth lived, I knew they weren't coming back. And I was alone. Really alone. The knowledge settled into me like a stone, dropping into water, rippling outwards, until there was no part of me untouched by it. For the first time since Chloe pulled away, leaving me stranded under the Colorado sun, I stopped hoping. I let the quiet swallow me whole. The sound of the buzzing sign, the rustling weeds, the distant highway, all fading into a single, endless silence. And in that silence, something else whispered, dark and terrifying, but somehow impossibly free. Now what I didn't know how long, I sat there staring at the horizon as darkness swallowed the sky. The gas station sign flickered behind me, buzzing like an angry wasp, casting me in sickly neon light that pulsed with each blink. My limbs felt heavy, like my bones had been replaced with wet sand. The last of the heat bled from the pavement, leaving only a brittle chill in the air. I hugged my arms around myself, teeth clenched against the shiver that racked my shoulders. They're not coming back. The thought rolled through my mind, on a loop now quiet and final. It no longer made me angry. It just made me tired. Headlights appeared down the road, bright against the dark. I didn't even bother standing up this time. Another car passing through, another reminder of how alone I was. The engine rumbled louder as it neared a deep, throaty growl. The truck slowed as it approached the gas station, turning in with a hiss of tires on gravel. I looked up, blinking against the sudden blaze of headlights, as the truck pulled up alongside me. It was an old Freightliner, its green paint faded and chipped, streaked with dust and road grime. The engine idled, rattling the ground beneath my feet. The driver's window rolled down with a squeal, and a face leaned out. An older man, maybe late 50s or early 60s, with a thick gray beard and deep lines carved into sunburned skin. His eyes were hidden under the shadow of a stained ball cap that read, "Peterbilt Pride. You okay there, son?" He asked, his voice rough but not unkind. He looked me over, taking in my sweat-stained t-shirt, the empty water bottle dangling from limp fingers, the lost, hollow look in my eyes. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I swallowed hard, forcing words through a throat that felt scraped raw. "Yeah, I'm fine." The trucker snorted softly, shifting in his seat. "Don't look fine. Been sitting here a while, haven't you?" I shrugged weakly. My ride left me. He grunted, nodding like this wasn't the first time he'd heard that line. He glanced at the dark road stretching away behind us, then back at me. "You got a phone? Someone to call?" I shook my head. My vision blurred for a moment as I fought the prickling sting in my eyes. No. Left it in the car. Wallet, too. The trucker sighed deep and weary and rubbed a hand across his beard. "God damn," he muttered under his breath. He looked down the road again, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. For a moment, silence stretched between us, broken only by the ticking of the truck's cooling engine. Finally, he jerked his chin towards the passenger door. "Get in." I blinked, my tired brain scrambling to process. "What get in?" he repeated. "Ain't leaving you out here to die on the pavement." "Where you headed?" I stared at him, my mind blank. Where am I headed? The question felt too big to answer. Home, back to Chloe. Back to the life that left me stranded under a dying sun. I don't know. I said softly, the words almost lost under the rumble of the idling truck. The trucker studied me for a moment, eyes shadowed under the brim of his cap. Then he nodded once, as if reaching some silent conclusion. "Well, I'm heading west. Grand Junction's the nearest town. I'll drop you there, least you'll be somewhere with food and a roof." I hesitated. My body screamed at me to move, to get up off the cold concrete, but my mind spun in dizzying circles. I didn't know this man. Didn't know if getting into that truck was salvation or a new kind of danger. But the truth was, I had no choice. Sitting here wouldn't bring Chloe back, wouldn't magic a phone into my hand or cash into my pocket. If I stayed, I'd spend the night curled up on asphalt, shivering under the neon glow, waiting for nothing. Slowly, I pushed myself to my feet. My legs trembled from exhaustion and dehydration. I gripped the edge of the truck's door to steady myself, feeling the chipped paint scrape against my palm. "Thank you," I murmured. "Don't thank me yet." The trucker grunted. "Just get in." I pulled open the passenger door. The smell of diesel fuel and stale cigarettes washed over me as I climbed up into the cab. The seat was torn in places, duct tape patching the worst rips. Fast food wrappers littered the floor, crumpled and greasy. A faded air freshener shaped like a pine tree dangled from the rearview mirror, spinning slowly in the breeze from the cracked window. The trucker shifted into gear, pulling out onto the empty highway with a low, rumbling growl. I settled into the seat, clutching the door handle as the cab rocked and swayed. The headlights carved twin tunnels of light into the darkness ahead, illuminating the scrubby plains rolling out to the horizon. For a while, neither of us spoke. I watched the road slip away under the tires, mile after mile of cracked pavement disappearing into the night. The rumble of the engine and the sway of the truck worked together, lulling me into a numb, weary daze. Finally, the trucker cleared his throat. "Name's Dale," he said, eyes fixed on the road. "You got one?" I hesitated, the urge to lie flashing through me for a moment, but I was too tired for lies. "Nathan," I said softly. Dale nodded once. "Well, Nathan, bad day, huh?" I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Yeah, you could say that." Dale didn't push for details. He just nodded again, tapping a thick finger against the steering wheel in rhythm with the country song humming low from the radio. The cab smelled of sweat and old coffee, but to me it felt like the safest place in the world. Outside, the highway stretched on into darkness, lit only by the moon and the flickering neon sign fading away behind us. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window, closing my eyes. For the first time since Chloe drove away, leaving me stranded under the blinding sun, I felt something like relief settle into my bones. It wasn't hope. Not yet. Just the quiet knowledge that I was moving again, that the world hadn't stopped with her departure. As the truck roared down the empty highway, a tiny spark flickered to life deep inside me. A question soft but insistent. If they could leave me so easily, why would I ever go back? The truck rumbled down the highway, its headlights slicing through the darkness in pale twin beams. I sat with my forehead pressed against the cool window, eyes half closed, watching shadows slip by sagebrush road signs, distant barbed wire fences glowing silver under the moonlight. Dale said nothing, and I was grateful. The silence between us felt solid, comforting, like an old quilt thrown over my shoulders. Every mile we put between me and that gas station eased the tight knot in my chest, even if only by a fraction. But then Chloe's face rose in my mind again, sharp and clear, her smile bright and careless. The way she'd tilt her head when she laughed at me like I was a child saying something foolish. The memory scraped across my ribs, raw and humiliating. Heat bloomed behind my eyes, and I blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall. "Hell of a night," Dale said suddenly, his gravelly voice cutting into the quiet. He shifted in his seat, steering with one hand, while the other rummaged through a plastic bag wedged between the seats. "Here." He shoved something towards me. A bottle of Gatorade, the plastic cool and dewy. I hesitated, then took it with shaking fingers. "Thank you." "Don't mention it," he muttered, focusing back on the road. I twisted off the cap and drank. The tangy sweetness burned down my throat, hitting my empty stomach like a fist. I paused, letting the nausea pass, then drank again, slower this time. We drove on in silence, the road stretching away into the black. The radio crackled softly, playing some old country song about losing everything and starting over. I let the lyrics drift over me, my head heavy against the seat. After a while, Dale spoke again. "So you gonna tell me what happened back there?" I stared out the window at the nothingness beyond the glass. Part of me wanted to spill it all, every cruel joke, every sharp word, every humiliating prank Chloe and her friends pulled over the last 5 years. But another part of me felt numb, empty. "She left me," I said simply, my voice hoarse. "My wife. Her friends too. Took the car, my phone, my wallet, left me at the gas station." Dale let out a low whistle. "Damn, that's cold." "Yeah." My lips twisted into a humorless smile. "It is." Silence again. Dale flicked his eyes over to me, reading something in my slumped shoulders. "You want to go back?" he asked. The question hung heavy between us. I felt it settle in my chest like a stone. Do I want to go back? I thought of Chloe's face again, her wide eyes and perfect teeth flashing in a laugh she never shared with me anymore. I thought of Stephanie's smug smirk, Hila's bored glances, Lauren's sharp little comments. I thought of sitting in the back seat listening to them joke about people they hated, wondering if I was ever the punchline when I left the room. My throat tightened. "No," I whispered. Dale nodded like he'd expected that. "Good," he said simply, turning back to the road. We drove on. The miles slipped by under the tires, carrying me further and further away from the place I'd been abandoned. I felt something shifting inside me, slow and tectonic. For so long I'd clung to Chloe like a lifeline, believing her love or what little scraps she tossed me gave my life meaning. But now, staring out into the black Colorado night, I felt that grip loosen. 5 years, I thought. 5 years of laughing at their jokes, pretending their barbs didn't hurt, telling myself this was love. I remembered our wedding day. How beautiful she looked walking down the aisle in her lace dress, hair coiled in soft curls. How her eyes sparkled as she said her vows. For a moment, I let myself believe that version of her was real. That woman who kissed me slow and soft under fairy lights strung across the reception tent. But then another memory snapped into place, our first fight 2 months later. Chloe's voice cold as ice. "God, Nathan, why do you have to be so sensitive all the time? Grow up." I closed my eyes, letting the memory fade. Outside, the landscape shifted from flat plains to low rolling hills, dotted with pinprick lights from distant ranch houses. The smell of sage drifted in through Dale's cracked window, sharp and clean. "What are you going to do now?" Dale asked after a while. I shook my head slowly. "I don't know. I don't have my ID, no money, no job. I don't even know who I'd call." I let out a shaky laugh. "I guess figure it out." Dale grunted. "Well, you're headed in the right direction. Grand Junction's got shelters, churches, folks who won't let you starve. You'll get back on your feet." I didn't reply. I watched the highway disappear under us, mile after mile, and felt that small flicker of something, hope maybe, or defiance, glow a little brighter in my chest. Because the truth was, Chloe leaving me there to rot hadn't killed me. It hadn't broken me. It had stripped everything away. Yes, my marriage, my pride, my sense of security. But underneath it all, there was still me. Still Nathan. And for the first time in years, I felt free. I didn't have to be the quiet husband standing in the background nodding along with their cruel jokes. I didn't have to laugh when Stephanie poured vodka in my coffee or pretended to flirt with me just to make Chloe laugh. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I could be whoever I wanted to be. The thought terrified me. It thrilled me too. Dale flicked on his blinker, exiting towards a cluster of distant lights. "We're almost there," he said. "I'll drop you near the mission. Good people there. They'll feed you, maybe help you get a fresh start." I swallowed hard, my chest tight. A fresh start. The words felt too big to hold right now, but they burrowed somewhere deep inside me all the same. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me," Dale said, pulling to a stop by the curb. "Just don't waste it." I opened the door, cold night air washing over me as I climbed down. My legs felt stiff, my back aching from hours in the cramped cab, but my steps were steady as I walked away from the truck. I turned back once. Dale was watching me, eyes shadowed under his hat. He raised a hand in farewell, and I raised mine in return. Then the truck rumbled off into the night taillights glowing red against the dark. I stood there on the quiet street, the city lights of Grand Junction flickering around me. For a moment, fear threatened to crush me. I had nothing. No home, no money, no plan. But then I took a deep breath, tasting sage and diesel and the crisp bite of freedom. I set my jaw, squared my shoulders, and took my first step into the unknown. I didn't know what was waiting for me. I didn't know who I would become. But as I walked towards the faint neon glow of a diner down the block, one thought rang clear and true in my chest. Whatever comes next, it's mine. I walked down the quiet street, my sneakers crunching gravel with every step. Grand Junction at night felt nothing like the places Chloe loved. No city lights or rooftop bars, just flickering neon signs over old brick storefronts and silent streets lined with shuttered diners and dusty pickup trucks. My stomach ached with hunger. I'd been running on adrenaline and anger for hours, but now only emptiness remained. The trucker Dale had dropped me off near the mission, pointing me towards a plain, concrete building with a cross painted over peeling white walls. I stood outside for a moment, staring at the door under the dim porch light. Part of me wanted to turn away to keep walking until my legs gave out. But exhaustion anchored me. I stepped inside. The air smelled of bleach, stale coffee, and fried food. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, washing the lobby in harsh white. A man behind a worn reception desk looked up. He was older, bald, with a lined face and watchful eyes that flicked over me in one quick sweep. "You lost? Or just broke?" he asked, his voice flat but not unkind. "Both," I said softly, rubbing the back of my neck. "My wife left me out on the highway. No money, no phone. Nothing." The man nodded like he'd heard 100 versions of that story before. He reached under the counter, pulling out a clipboard. Name Nathan, last name I hesitated, then gave it. He wrote it down with a squeak of his pen. "Fill this out. We'll get you a bed tonight. Breakfast at 6 sharp. Tomorrow we'll see about getting you some help." I took the clipboard with trembling fingers. The questions blurred before my eyes: name, birthday, social security number. I left half of it blank, not knowing what to write. When I handed it back, he read it over, nodded, and gestured down the hall. "Third door on your left. Bunk 23. I walked down the corridor, the dim lights flickering overhead. The room was lined with metal bunks, most of them occupied by men in ragged clothes, their snores and coughs filling the silence. I found bunk 23, a thin mattress with a coarse gray blanket folded at the foot. Sitting down, I felt the springs creak under my weight. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the floor. Chloe's face rose in my mind again, her laughter echoing like poison in my chest. My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to scream, to sob, to curl into a ball and disappear. But instead, I lay back on the mattress, pulling the rough blanket over my shoulders. The ceiling above me was stained with water damage, dark splotches spreading like ink in paper. I traced them with my eyes until my vision blurred. Somewhere across the room, a man coughed violently, then fell silent. I closed my eyes and let the tears come hot and silent sliding into my hair. I didn't cry for Chloe. I cried for the years I'd lost, for the man I'd let myself become, for the emptiness eating away at my chest. But when I woke the next morning to the dim glow of dawn through grimy windows, something felt different. My eyes were swollen, my body stiff, but my chest felt lighter. There was still pain, a dull, heavy ache under my ribs, but it no longer pressed me into the ground. I swung my legs over the side of the bunk and sat up, staring at the rows of sleeping men around me. Their breaths rose and fell in ragged rhythms. A thought flickered through my mind, small but insistent. I'm still here. I stood, stretched my arms over my head, and rolled my shoulders. My stomach growled painfully, reminding me why I needed to keep moving. After breakfast, stale toast, watery eggs, burnt coffee, the man from the front desk handed me a slip of paper. "Diner down the streets looking for help," he said. "Jacqueline's, owner's rough around the edges, but she pays cash. Tell her Roy sent you." I folded the paper, tucked it into my pocket, and stepped out into the cold morning air. The sun was just cresting over the low buildings, staining the sky pink and gold. I stuffed my hands into my pockets, feeling the crinkle of Roy's note against my knuckles, and walked. The diner wasn't far. A squat brick building with a faded sign that read, "Jacqueline's" in peeling red paint. Inside it smelled of bacon grease and burnt coffee, warm and welcoming in a tired, grimy way. An older woman with wiry gray hair and tattoos snaking up her arms stood behind the counter, wiping it down with quick, sharp movements. She glanced up as I entered, her eyes narrowing. "What do you want?" she barked, voice rough as gravel. "Roy sent me," I said, swallowing hard. "Said you might be looking for help." She studied me for a long, silent moment, her eyes flicking over my worn jeans, my dirt-stained shirt, the exhaustion lining my face. Finally, she grunted. "Dishwasher quit yesterday. Pays shit. Hours are long. You steal from me, I'll bury you behind the dumpster." "Start now," I blinked, caught off guard by the bluntness. But I nodded. "Yeah, I'll start now." She tossed me a stained apron and jerked her chin towards the swinging doors in the back. "Get in there, kid. Those plates ain't gonna wash themselves." As I tied the apron around my waist and pushed through into the steamy chaos of the dish pit, I felt something flicker in my chest. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was movement. Forward. And for now, that was enough. The dish pit was hotter than hell. Steam rose from the industrial sink in thick white coils clinging to my face and hair until sweat dripped steadily down my neck. The metal counters were slick with soap and grease plates stacked high on either side of me. My fingers turned red and raw from the scalding water. Every few minutes, Jacqueline would bark orders from the front. "Faster, kid. These ain't decorative." I didn't complain. I didn't even speak. I just scrubbed, rinsed, stacked. My arms burned, my lower back ached, and soap stung at the cuts on my knuckles. But with every squeaky clean plate I slid into the drying rack, something heavy inside me loosened. Here, no one laughed at me. No one poured vodka in my coffee or whispered about me from across the table. Here, the only thing that mattered was keeping up with the never-ending mountain of dishes. And as brutal as it was, it felt simple, pure. At the end of that first day, Jacqueline slapped a few crumpled bills into my hand. "Cash daily until you prove you ain't gonna bail," she said, her eyes sharp under wiry brows. I nodded, mumbling a hoarse "thank you" before stumbling out into the fading evening light. I walked back to the shelter with the money tucked deep in my pocket, fingers clenched tight around it like it might disappear. My legs felt like rubber. My shirt was soaked through with sweat clinging to my back, but each step felt solid, anchored to the cracked sidewalk beneath my worn sneakers. That night, lying on my narrow bunk with the coarse blanket pulled up to my chin, I stared at the dark stains on the ceiling. My whole body pulsed with exhaustion, every muscle aching. But there was something else humming under it, a quiet, fierce sense of triumph. I did this, I thought. Me. No Chloe. No one else. The next morning came early. Breakfast was the same: watery eggs, burnt toast, black coffee, thick with grounds. Roy clapped me on the shoulder on my way out. "You're doing good, Nathan," he said, his gruff voice softening. "Keep at it." I just nodded, swallowing around the sudden tightness in my throat. I walked back to the diner, pushing through the heavy door as the bell jingled overhead. Jacqueline gave me a sharp look, chin jutting towards the back. Aprons hanging up. "Let's go." The days bled together after that. Scrubbing plates until my hands cracked and bled, taking out trash that stank so bad it made my eyes water, wiping down grimy counters under Jacqueline's hawk-eyed stare. But each night she pressed wrinkled bills into my palm, and each night I walked back to the shelter with my head held a little higher. I started to learn the rhythm of the diner, the old jukebox that skipped on track 7, the regulars who came in every morning at 6 for coffee and bacon, Jacqueline's subtle way of saying good job by not yelling at me for an hour straight. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere, even if it was just a dingy kitchen that smelled of fryer grease and burnt toast. A week later, after my shift, I stopped at a corner gas station and bought myself a new toothbrush and a travel-size deodorant with the cash I'd saved. Standing in the tiny fluorescent-lit bathroom, scrubbing my teeth until my gums bled, I caught my reflection in the cracked mirror. I still looked rough, gaunt, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, but there was something steadier in my gaze, something that hadn't been there before. "I'm still here," I thought again, rolling my shoulders back. I'm not done yet. At the shelter that night, Roy handed me a stack of forms. "Start working on a replacement ID," he said. "Can't get far without it." I stared at the paperwork, fear curling cold and tight in my belly. But I nodded. "Yeah, okay." Day by day, dish by dish, dollar by dollar, I started building something that looked like a life. Jacqueline stopped barking at me every minute, only every 10. Roy started greeting me with a nod that felt almost like respect. And I woke up each morning with the same ache in my back, the same buzzing hum of snores and coughs around me, but with a purpose, however small. I didn't think about Chloe much. When I did, it felt distant, like remembering a movie I'd once watched and hated. She was out there somewhere with her friends and their laughter, but their world felt like a different planet now. One evening, after a double shift, I sat at the diner counter with my first real meal in days, a staff plate of greasy scrambled eggs and toast. Jacqueline shoved my way with a grunt. I ate it slowly, savoring every bite as the neon lights buzzed overhead and the jukebox hummed out a tired country song. For the first time since Chloe left me baking under the Colorado sun, I felt okay. Not good, not happy, but okay. Steady. Maybe this is what rebuilding looks like, I thought, sipping burnt coffee that tasted like freedom. One dish at a time. I was elbow deep in soapy water, scrubbing dried cheese off a stack of plates, when my world shifted again. It was a Tuesday. The lunch rush had just died down, leaving behind towers of dirty dishes and a kitchen thick with the smell of burnt toast and fryer grease. Jacqueline's sharp voice cut through the din, barking orders at the line cook about undercooked bacon. I barely registered it anymore. My mind had settled into the rhythm of the dish pit scrape rinse scrub stack. I felt the vibration in my pocket before I heard it. A faint buzz against my thigh muffled by the denim of my jeans. For a moment, confusion clouded my thoughts. I hadn't felt that sensation in weeks. My phone. I'd bought it 2 days earlier with cash saved from my shifts, a cheap prepaid flip phone from the gas station down the street. The plastic felt flimsy in my hands when I first opened it, but I didn't care. It was mine. Paid for with my own sweat. Not Chloe's. Not anyone else's. I wiped my hands on my apron soap suds smearing across the stained fabric and pulled out the phone. The tiny screen blinked with an unfamiliar number. My stomach twisted tight. I let it ring, staring at the glowing digits until it went silent. A minute later, the notification popped up. Voicemail. I hesitated. I knew. Deep down, before even pressing play, I knew exactly who it was. My thumb hovered over the button, then pressed down. Chloe's voice crackled through the cheap speaker, soft and shaky like she'd been crying. "Nathan, where are you? We waited for you. It was just a joke, okay? We're so worried. Please call me back." Her words slithered into my chest like ice water. I stood frozen dish brush dangling from my hand, steam curling up around my face. "We waited for you." The lie pulsed bright and ugly in my mind. If they'd waited, they'd have come back hours ago. The phone buzzed again, jerking me out of my daze. Another voicemail. Stephanie this time. Her voice was light casual, edged with laughter. "Come on, dude. You have to admit it was hilarious. Call us back, all right, hilarious." I clenched the phone so hard, the cheap plastic creaked. Steam roiled around me, fogging my vision as rage burned hot and blinding in my chest. That's what I was to them. A joke. A story to tell over cocktails. Remember when we ditched Nathan at that gas station, God, his face. The phone buzzed again. Another call. Another voicemail. I didn't listen. I couldn't. I shoved it back into my pocket and plunged my hands into the scalding water, scrubbing so hard my knuckles burned raw. That night at the shelter, long after the lights dimmed and snores filled the bunk room, I lay on my thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling. The phone sat on my chest, glowing with missed calls and voicemails. Chloe again. Lauren. Ela. The same words in different voices. "Where are you? This isn't funny anymore. Please just call us back." My thumb hovered over the call button. For a moment, I imagined dialing her number, screaming down the line, demanding why she did it, why she laughed, why she left me with nothing. But what would it change? She'd cry. She'd say, "You're overreacting. It was just a joke." God, Nathan, you're so dramatic. And somehow she'd twist it until I felt guilty again. I scrolled through their names, each one lighting up the screen. Chloe, Stephanie, Ela, Lauren. The people who had defined my life for 5 years. The people who left me to rot under the sun. My finger trembled as I pressed options. One by one, I blocked them all. The phone went silent. No more buzzing. No more voices. Just quiet. I lay back against the thin pillow, staring up at the darkness above me. My chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and shameful, but I blinked them away. It felt like cutting a rope that had bound me for years. Heavy, terrifying, freeing. I turned the phone over in my hand, the plastic warm from my grip. For the first time in a long time, I realized they couldn't reach me anymore. They couldn't decide how this ended. I decide. Outside the city hummed with distant traffic and the low moan of a passing train. Inside, the bunks creaked as men shifted in sleep. I closed my eyes, breathing in the sour smell of bleach and stale sweat. Tomorrow would come with its own battles, greasy plates, burned fingers, Jacqueline's barking voice. But for tonight, I felt light, untethered. They'd left me behind, thinking it would break me, but all it did was set me free. Weeks blurred into months. I scrubbed dishes until my hands cracked stacked crates, until my shoulders burned, and swept grease-streaked floors long after closing, while Jacqueline counted cash at the counter. The diner became my world. Its hum of clinking plates and faint jukebox country songs drowned out thoughts of Chloe and the life I'd left behind. I saved every crumpled bill Jacqueline handed me at the end of each shift, tucking them into an envelope I kept hidden under my cot at the shelter. After 2 months, I had enough for a small studio above a laundromat. It was nothing special, just a narrow room with peeling linoleum floors, a lumpy mattress on the ground, a rust-stained sink, and a single window that overlooked the back alley dumpsters. But it was mine. No snoring strangers, no coughing in the night. Just quiet. I settled into a routine. Wake up before dawn, walk to the diner, scrub, rinse, sweep, eat whatever Jacqueline tossed my way at the end of the day. Walk home, sleep, repeat. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was building something solid. Then she showed up, Sienna. She started coming into Jacqueline's diner every Wednesday and Friday afternoon, always sliding into the booth by the window. She was young, mid-20s maybe, with dark hair pulled into a messy bun and oversized sweaters swallowing her thin frame. Her table would always be littered with textbooks and notebooks scribbled with tiny, cramped handwriting. Medical terminology scrawled in neat lines down every margin. She ordered the same thing every time: Denver omelet, no tomatoes, extra coffee. And she barely looked up when I brought it over, just murmured, "Thanks," without glancing away from her notes. At first, I didn't pay her much mind. She was just another customer, another order ticket clipped to the wheel. But week after week, she came back. Always alone, always lost in her world of flashcards and highlighted anatomy diagrams. One slow afternoon, with the lunch rush dying down, I decided to mess with her just to see if she was paying attention to the world outside her textbooks. I switched out my name tag for one I found in the back. It read Rusty, scrawled in faded black letters. When I brought her coffee refill, she glanced up briefly, her eyes narrowing. "Your name tag is wrong," she said, her voice quiet but firm, like she was diagnosing a patient. I grinned, caught off guard. "Is it?" She raised an eyebrow, lips twitching like she was trying not to smile. "Yeah, you don't look like a Rusty." I chuckled, the sound rusty in my own chest from lack of use. "Guess you'll have to keep guessing then." After that, it became a silent game. One shift I was Tom, the next Steve, another day Carl. Each time she'd glance up from her notes, smirk, and shake her head. Our first real conversation happened on a rainy Friday. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair tangled from running in through the downpour. When I set down her coffee, she sighed, rubbing her temples. "Rough day?" I asked before I could stop myself. She laughed softly, the sound tired but warm. "Exams. Haven't slept in 2 days." My brain feels like mashed potatoes. Hash browns might help. I offered, nodding at her plate. Close enough. That made her smile for real, wide and unguarded. Her eyes crinkled at the corners, and something in my chest shifted. It was small, just a flicker. But it was there. Our first date wasn't really a date at all. She came in one evening wearing jeans and a soft black sweater, hair damp from the drizzle outside. She slid into her usual booth and ordered pancakes even though it wasn't on the dinner menu. Jacqueline just rolled her eyes and made them anyway. When I brought her plate, she looked up at me, biting her lip. "Hey, this is random, but my friends bailed on me for dinner tonight. I've got a reservation at that new pizza place down the street. Would you want to come? I hate eating alone." I blinked, stunned. I was wearing my stained apron, hands smelling of soap and fryer oil. No one had ever asked me to dinner like that, simply, honestly, without pretense. Jacqueline, who'd been listening from behind the counter, barked out, "Go, idiot. You're no use to me moping around here." So I went. We split a pepperoni pizza and a pitcher of soda, talking about everything and nothing, her med school rotations, my work at the diner, childhood cartoons we both secretly still watched. She laughed when I told her about the name tag prank. "I knew it wasn't Rusty," she said, eyes sparkling. "You're not that old." 6 months later, Sienna moved into my tiny studio. Her textbooks took up half the space, stacked high on every flat surface, but I didn't mind. The mornings felt brighter with her there, humming softly, as she tied her hair back before class, scribbling flashcards, while I made us instant coffee on the hot plate. For the first time in my life, I woke up feeling okay. Safe. Wanted. I didn't think about Chloe much anymore. When I did, it felt like remembering a bad dream, hazy, distant, and powerless to touch me now. I'd spent 5 years loving a woman who left me stranded under the sun like trash on the side of the road. But now, lying beside Sienna at night, listening to her breathing slow and steady in sleep, I felt something close to peace. And as I drifted off her hair, tickling my chin, I realized I didn't need revenge or apologies. I didn't need Chloe's voice in my ear ever again. This quiet, messy, simple life was enough. I never planned on staying at Jacqueline's diner this long. When I first scrubbed those greasy plates until my knuckles cracked, it was just a job to keep me alive. But weeks turned into months, and the dish pit became my universe, hot steam, clinking porcelain, the smell of burnt toast and bacon that seeped into my skin so deep I carried it everywhere. I didn't mind. For once in my life, I felt useful. No one here cared who I was before. I was Nathan the dishwasher who showed up on time and didn't complain. That was enough. One afternoon, after I finished scrubbing out the fryer baskets, I stepped into the kitchen doorway and leaned against the frame, wiping sweat from my brow with the back of my wrist. Jacqueline was barking at the line cook about soggy hash browns. When she noticed me standing there, she squinted. What she snapped. "Fryers are done," I said quietly. "Anything else before I head out?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked to the clock above the pass window, then back to me. "You ever chop onions?" Before I blinked. "Yeah, back when I cooked for my wife. A lot." "Good." She jerked her chin towards the prep table. "Dish boy didn't show. Help Pete with prep." I hesitated for a second. My shift was technically over, but I nodded anyway, washed my hands, grabbed a chef's knife, and got to work. By the time I finished slicing 5 pounds of onions, my eyes burned so bad I could barely see straight. But Jacqueline didn't yell at me once. She just watched from across the kitchen, her tattooed arms crossed over her chest, and gave a single curt nod when I wiped down the cutting board and stacked it back on the rack. After that day, she started calling me in early or asking me to stay late. "You're wasted in the dish pit." She grunted once while I peeled a mountain of potatoes. "You've got hands that know what work is." I didn't say anything, just kept peeling, letting her words sink in like warm water over frost-bitten skin. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Tuesday, dead slow between the breakfast and lunch rush. I was chopping onions in the back, humming under my breath, when Jacqueline poked her head through the swinging door. "Front. Now." I wiped my hands and walked out, heart pounding. I half expected her to fire me for some mistake I hadn't realized I made. She stood behind the counter, arms crossed, her faded rose tattoos bunching against her elbows. Her gray hair was tied back in its usual frizzy bun, and her eyes locked on mine with a sharp, measuring look. "I'm opening a second diner across town," she said. Her voice was low, almost casual, but I felt the weight behind it. "Smaller place. Breakfast and lunch only. I need someone to run it." I stared at her. "Run it," she snorted. "Don't look so shocked. You're here more than I am. You know the kitchen you don't steal and you keep your damn mouth shut. You want it or not." My throat went dry. Me run a diner. A year ago I was scrubbing dishes in silence, trying not to think about Chloe's laughter echoing in my head. Now this woman who didn't hand out compliments unless they were buried under curses was offering me her trust. I swallowed hard. Yeah, I want it." She nodded once, like she'd already made up her mind long before asking. "Good. You start training with Pete tomorrow. Don't screw it up." That night, I walked back to the studio with my chest tight and my head spinning. Sienna was already home, sitting cross-legged on the mattress, surrounded by her textbooks. She looked up as I closed the door, her dark hair falling over her eyes. "You're home late," she said softly. I stood there staring at her, this woman who filled every empty corner of my life with quiet strength. My voice trembled when I spoke. "Jacqueline, she wants me to run her new diner." Sienna's face lit up. She scrambled off the bed and threw her arms around my neck, burying her face into my chest. I held her tight, feeling her warmth seep into me, melting the ice that had clung to my ribs for so many years. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew she'd see what I see." I closed my eyes, resting my chin on her head. Chloe's face flickered across my mind, sharp and cold, her laughter ringing with mockery. But it was distant now, like a radio playing in another room. Sienna's embrace was here, real, grounding me to a future that finally felt like mine. That night, as she fell asleep beside me, her soft breathing brushing my collarbone, I lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling. For the first time since I stepped out of that gas station bathroom and found myself alone under the blinding Colorado sun, I let myself imagine something bigger than survival. I imagined myself standing behind a diner counter, coffee pot in hand, greeting regulars by name. I imagined a little apartment above the diner with real curtains and space for a second chair. I imagined a life I built with my own hands, brick by brick, plate by plate. A life Chloe couldn't touch. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But as I drifted off to sleep, listening to the distant hum of the laundromat downstairs, one thought anchored me in the darkness. This is just the beginning. I never thought I'd see Chloe again. 15 years had passed since she left me stranded under that blinding Colorado sun. 15 years of scrubbing dishes until my knuckles cracked, learning how to run a kitchen, building 3 diners from scratch with my own 2 hands. 15 years of becoming a man I actually respected. Then one quiet afternoon, she walked in. I was wiping down the counter at the original diner, the jukebox humming low. The bell above the door jingled, and there she was, Chloe, hair shorter now, and dyed too light makeup smeared under tired eyes. Stephanie and Ela followed behind, both looking older, their designer bags clutched tight like shields. Nathan, Chloe breathed, her voice shaking. "Oh my God, it's really you." I didn't say anything, just kept wiping the counter rag squeaking under my fist. She stepped forward, tears brimming. "We need your help." Stephanie snorted. "Come on, dude. You've got 3 diners now, right? We just need a little cash to get back on our feet." Ella wouldn't even look at me. I set down my rag and walked around the counter. Pulled out my checkbook, wrote quickly, tore out the slip, and folded it before handing it to Chloe. Her fingers shook as she read the number. $73.50. The exact cost of a Greyhound ticket back home from Grand Junction 15 years ago. Her face crumpled. Stephanie snatched the check from her, glaring. "What the hell is this?" "That's what it would have cost me to come back to you the day you left me to rot," I said quietly. "I didn't take it then. I'm sure as hell not giving you more now." Chloe's tears fell silently. "Please, Nathan, no." My voice didn't shake. "Get out of my diner." They stared at me for a beat too long. Then Stephanie cursed under her breath and shoved the check into Chloe's purse. Ella turned away, wiping her eyes. They left without another word, the bell jingling as the door swung shut behind them. I stood there, breathing slow and steady, feeling every pair of eyes on me. The waitress behind the counter whispered, "You okay, boss?" I picked up my rag and kept wiping. "Yeah, I'm good." That night, I went home to Sienna, who sat at the kitchen table grading anatomy flashcards, her hair tied up in that messy bun I loved so damn much. Our son was building Lego towers on the carpet. Our daughter was curled up beside him, coloring cats in pink crayon. Sienna looked up, reading my face instantly. "Everything okay?" I walked over and kissed her forehead. "Yeah," I whispered. "Better than okay." Later, after the kids were asleep, I told her what happened. She listened quietly, then reached across the couch, her fingers tangling with mine. "They can't take anything from you anymore," she said softly. I nodded, feeling something loosen deep in my chest. For so long, Chloe's laughter had haunted me, echoing through every quiet moment. But now, lying beside Sienna in the dark, listening to her breathe slow and steady, I realized Chloe didn't matter anymore. She thought leaving me would break me, but it built me instead. I closed my eyes, letting the quiet of our home sink into my bones, and smiled into the darkness. Whatever came next, it was mine to build, mine to live. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel afraid.